Washington has some major portal momentum.
You are Locked On Huskies, your daily podcast on the Washington Huskies, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome back into another edition of the Locked On Huskies podcast. I'm Roman Tomashoff. That's Lars Hanson. He's site editor with Athlon Sports Inside the Huskies. I'm the site editor with Huskies Wire. Thank you for making this your first watch or first listen of the day, as we are part of the Lockdown Podcast Network, your team every day. And today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code Lockdown College for $20 off your first purchase. Lars, quick reminder to all the everydayers out there, make sure you subscribe wherever you get this podcast, like the video, leave a comment down below. And if you're audio only, please leave us a 5-star review. All those things will really help us out a lot. But we got a really fun show coming up for all the everydayers out there today, because we're going to talk about some things we want to see in the Sun Bowl. Tyler Shough opted out. That's going to be really interesting. We'll get into some of those things, but we got so much more portal talk that we need to get to, because Carver Willis committed to Washington, one of the top available transfer portal offensive linemen. We're going to talk about what that could mean for the group Washington is going to roll out in 2025, but it also is a really great sign that Washington is willing to pony up to get some of these elite players in the door.
So this is a really promising addition, and it's somebody, when you look at him, 2-year starter, 1.5-year starter at Kansas State, because the back half of 23, he wasn't listed as a starter on PFF, but again, that could just be semantics. He played over 30 snaps in each game, and actually, honestly, if you look at the grades, was better slightly in the back half of 23 than he was in 24, but he was still one of the top 15 run blocking grades, run blocking offensive linemen, minimum, 25, 30 snaps, so it had to be like a significant starter in the Big 12. So you're not just getting a starter, you're getting a starter who's a top 15 player in the conference, not on the team, in the conference. Sure. More sacks, only had 4 sacks allowed his entire career, 3 in the last 2 seasons, something like that. And so this is a guy where, you can flip him over to the left side if you really, really want to. As I wrote on Athlon Sports, if Brennan Carroll's pitch is to say, hey, you know what, we know you can do it on the right side, we're going to make you an NFL left tackle, and, keeping with the 33rd team tradition here. I don't hate that, but I wouldn't be surprised if this is a lockdown right tackle spot, because you just look at the way that position went this past season. Drew Azzopardi, the San Diego State transfer, was fine, but I think everybody can admit that he could have had a better season and probably will have a better season in the future. But when you look at what Jed has to do in 25 and the impetus to win, you need to go get those kind of 1-year rentals and say, look, learn from this guy, then you can take over the next year again, and we're not demoting you because you're still going to play. It's just a matter of, you need to go increase the competition, and doing this, though, in a big way speaks volumes.
So I absolutely agree with you there. That's a really great point. We're going to get more into what this offensive line might look like as of right now. Maybe we'll get into another edition or two. Stick around. You'll find out. But on top of that, I think this is a really great sign for Washington's NIL, where, we've talked ad nauseum on the show over the last couple of weeks, not only of, hey, you need to go find a way to make sure that you're ponying up for premium players at premium positions, which, as we know, in the transfer portal is offensive tackle and defensive tackle. So that's a great sign. You're able to get, one of those. Now I want to see what that looks like on the defensive line as well. But on top of that, it also just shows that Washington's coaching staff is willing to go out there and do that and make those not only make those significant upgrades, but pay top dollar to get them. Because that's what it sounded like they wanted to do. And this isn't everything, but this is a really great step in the right direction, where, let's be real. We need to go see, maybe another one, talk about we're going to, again, get way more into the offensive line, but Wendell Moy on the interior there, that's a name that we've been keeping an eye on. Tacario Davis, that's another one. And then you look at some of the guys we talked about on yesterday's show, whether it be Jory Bledsoe, whether it be Josiah Trotter, where those are a couple other names. There are a whole bunch of other guys that are visiting. I know there's a Utah defensive tackle that's coming in, where that's something we talked about with our Locked On Huskies Insider. Shout out. Go check that out down in the description below as well, where there are all those different things. There are all these different players that you can say, hey, this is somebody Washington's looking at. That's somebody Washington's looking at. We saw it on the recruiting trail, where it's, hey, Dijon Lee's coming in on a visit. We see all these, like Andrew Marsh, Donovan Olubade. There are so many big names that are coming in on a visit, and you weren't able to seal the deal for one reason or another. That's going to happen. That's part of recruiting. But now in the transfer portal process, if you're really serious about finding a way to going out there and making a huge impact on the Big Ten in 2025, you need to make sure that you're willing to pay top of market value to go get some of these players. And getting Carver Willis is a great sign of, hey, that's where this coaching staff wants to go.
Absolutely. Well, and just a quick aside, could there not be a more better name for an offensive lineman? Carver.
Oh, fantastic name.
Right when I saw that, I was just like, oh, sign me up. Like, and again, we'd already known about him, knew how good he was, but it's just like, you're going and getting the name, no pun intended on the NIL front there. But it's a security thing in terms of, how good you can be next year, where we set the expectation 8-4 this season. They finished 6-6 with the potential to honestly be 8-4 with the Rutgers and Wazoo game. We ran through next season's schedule off the record, obviously, and we just kind of said, 7, 8, 9, like 9, 10. It's kind of right there, depending on which way you go. And what has been the difference this past season? The offensive line. What does everybody know they needed to do? Get offensive linemen. Now, certainly, you're getting other key positions, a linebacker, a cornerback, a safety. I know they offered the NAU guy. There's been a couple others that they've been looking at safety. So there's other positions of need. But I think without question, the fact that you're starting strong with Geirean Hatchett and now Carver Willis along the offensive line and potential when you add Wendell into that mix, and it's like, okay, there's your 3 offensive linemen right there. That's all you need. And by the way, those are 3 guys that are A1, like the veterans of veterans. You're not talking about a redshirt sophomore with multiple years. You're talking like, look, we just need to go prove that we can finish this job in 25. And that just means getting those 1-year rentals, where we saw Enoch actually had a pretty good season this year. Obviously, it sounds like he was battling a couple of injuries. But really, I mean, from what he did at Ohio State to not starting to coming to Washington, being a basically entrenched starter, that shows. And, you imagine like a Carver Willis. So it's like, hey, look, we did this with Enoch. We can do this just the same with you, where you're a starter. You're going to be probably probably second team, Big Ten edition when we look back on it. And those are the moves that you have to make, because Damon can only do so much. The running backs can only do so much. And the reason why I like this the most is his impact in the run game. I know I mentioned 4 sacks in his career and those sort of things. This is a top 15 run blocking grade by PFF in the Big 12 this past season. Second on the team at Kansas State. And it was only by I think 1 or 2 percentage points that he wasn't the top graded run blocker. So when you look at that, it's not just, oh, hey, we're just getting a pass blocker, still kind of some issues in the run game. It's an overall great addition. I think that can't be undersold, because yes, you want to, obviously everything starts with the quarterback, but when Washington can run the ball effectively, everything in this offense sets up perfectly.
So I absolutely agree with you there. And then on top of it, it's something we're going to just hammer home throughout the offseason. It's all about protecting DeMond Williams and saying, because Jed Fish has said it numerous times, that, hey, this guy is the future of our program. And you need to find ways that you're going to show that. And, you look at bringing in a guy like this, it's exactly what you want to see, where Kansas State was 3rd in the Big 12 in rushing yards, which is great to see when, you're planning on having a really exciting running back tandem of Jonah Coleman, Adam Muhammad, and then obviously some DeMond in there as well. But you want to show off that he's got the arm talent as well. And you can show off all those things by making sure he's protected and not letting him get sacked 10 times in a game like he was in his first career start. So making a strong investment on the offensive line is a great way to do that. Now, Lars, let's talk about what that might look like in 2025. Which we'll get to right after a message from our good friends over at Game Time, because Game Time has a new feature called Game Time Picks that makes getting tickets to see your favorite teams play live even easier. Game Time Picks forces up the fluff to show you only incredible deals on great seats, so you don't have to waste time searching through thousands of tickets, which is great news for anybody who wants to go check out Husky basketball, the Seahawks, the Kraken. There's so many great deals you can go find over on the Game Time app, because with Game Time Picks, Geirean makes it easier to save more on sports, concerts, comedy, theater, and so much more. With their all-in prize, you can toggle this feature and it shows total upfront with no surprise fees at checkout. And with the Game Time lowest price guarantee, Game Time will credit you with 110% of the difference if you find a lower price somewhere else. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time Picks. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKDOWNCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONCOLLEGE for $20 off. Download Game Time today. What time is it? Game time. So, Lars, let's jump into this offensive line a little bit, where as of right now, I believe that 4 of the 5 starters are on this roster. I think that right now the top priority for a 5th guy is Wendell Moy from Arizona. We've talked about that. We're going to keep a very close eye on that situation. But let's dive into the other 4 positions, where I want to hear what your projected starting 5 is as of right now, because right now I have it like this. With just, again, where the roster is as we record this on December 12th of 2024. Left tackle, Maximus McCree. Left guard is Geirean Hatchett. Center is going to be Landen Hatchett. Right guard, I don't think that position's on the roster right now, but if let's say they roll with it as is, I'd go with Pocky Finau, where I'm really intrigued to see how that plays out. And right tackle, Carver Willis.
Yeah, I mean, I think the only change that I would make, aside from the Geirean potentially flipping to right guard, would be the only other guy in contention is going to be Zach Henning in terms of guys that they've tried at the position, because they also tried Henning at center, lest we forget. So you could, maybe if he takes a big growth, maybe he's your center and Landen kicks over to right guard. But I would imagine, I think just the way that Landen spoke coming into fall camp and everything like that, having Landen as your center kind of just seems like the logical point at this way. And so that's why the right guard position becomes so impactful, because I think Henning's going to certainly get game time next year. I have no doubt about that. And that's when you kind of look at it and could you say, okay, is it Geirean and Landen, or Geirean and Henning, and they're battling a right guard, then Wendell Moy becomes your left guard. I know, he played right guard, that sort of thing. But again, these are all moving pieces. But I think aside from that, like that's your offensive line, and that's a lot. I don't want to say better, because then Max was on the roster last year, but he was a late addition in terms of, when I say late addition, yes, he came in June and that sort of thing. But now having a full off season, having spring ball, summer, conditioning, everything that comes with it, and, having those game reps that he got this season, like Max looked pretty good to me. And I know I was kind of I was biggest supporter, obviously, coming into the season without question. Not that anybody else was, but I was going to die on that hill, because we saw it against Iowa, and we saw it in even the earlier games against Michigan and things like that, where it's like when he's healthy and when everything's going and he's in shape, he's very solid at the left tackle spot. So that's why I don't think you need to put over Carver Willis at left tackle. And that's almost kind of like, that's why the Carver addition was so important, is look, just anchor that right side. We'll figure out who the right guard spot is eventually. Because I think that's what's going to be intriguing to see. What, with or without Wendell, how much do Henning and Pocky play this year? Because Henning, I think, got most of the games. Pocky only played 2 games. Now, by design, as a true freshman, that's acceptable, because Henning was a redshirt freshman. He should get more game time. Was basically the go-to 6th offensive lineman for Washington this season. And I think either one of those guys could end up winning out at right guard if they don't decide to add anybody else. And even if they do add one more guy, Wendell, I believe, is a 1-year addition. Correct me if I'm wrong on that. You're right. With that mindset, neither of those 2 guys would be impacted, because if you're Henning, okay, you're a redshirt junior, redshirt senior, there's 2 years as a starter. You don't lose necessarily anything in that realm, and you could get more reps, like we saw this past season with some guys getting right guard reps behind Enoch at right guard, and same thing with left guard. And so it's just a matter of, you want the starters to be entrenched, but then you need to have that solid rotating piece, because we know Brennan's going to rotate some guys. We know you're going to have injuries. And so that's the other key to this is somebody could say, well, wait, why do you need to go get Wendell when you have plenty of guys on the roster? It's not an indictment on the guys that are younger on the roster. It's just in the Big Ten, as we saw this season, you need to have that first, it's almost like a hockey unit where it's like you have that first line and then the second line, and then the third line, and then the third line being Hilkema and the younger freshmen that are coming in this past season, this past class. And so all of that would work together to say you just need one more anchor. And I don't think it impacts Pocky or Zach in a negative way, because they're still going to play. But you need to have, same thing with right tackle, that A1 guy that you can say, look, learn from him, build up your thing. And by the way, if you happen to pull a Kamori House and beat out the veteran, so be it. That's a good problem to be in. That's a good problem to have. Whereas you did not have that problem this past season.
So I feel like the biggest question where, the interior, like we said, doesn't seem totally settled. The biggest question is probably left tackle, where you talk about Maximus McCree. There are other guys in the roster, but I agree with you when it's Maximus. He did play well before he obviously had the dislocated thumb against Iowa. We haven't seen him since. I do expect him to play in the bowl game. I'll get more into that actually when we get to the third segment. But when I look at what that left tackle position is going to be, I truly don't think we're going to see another tackle through the transfer portal. I could be wrong. I certainly could be, but I think the coaching staff really liked the way Max McCree played. And I think that the Kaylee Tafai transfer kind of plays right into that, where it's, hey, somebody was going to end up leaving the room where maybe he knew, they're bringing in another tackle and they want to move me into the interior. I'd prefer to play tackle full-time, whatever it might be. We truly don't know. That's nothing more than speculation, but I look at where this roster is right now, and even a 1-year rental, I don't want to say it doesn't make sense, but I think where if you're playing Carver Willis over Drew Azzopardi on the right side, we know they tried Drew Azzopardi on the left. It didn't necessarily work very well, but all of a sudden you like the depth a lot better there. where it goes so far beyond just Max and Sewane Fasolo and Jereza Party, where it's the redshirt freshman. Does a David Boyajian or a Justin Hilkema, do they overtake Sewane Fasolo or Jereza Party? Because like you said, it's a good problem to have when the depth and these young guys are winning and they're beating these older guys out. Great thing. Or do you look at, whether it be a John Mills or one of the other players in this 2025 class? I don't expect that to happen personally, but just because, just the whole depth thing, we'll see how it works out. But do one of those guys take a jump? And it's something that we've seen when, Wendell Moy is a perfect example of players that are going to play young. They did so at Arizona. And we know that Brendan Carroll is willing to do that. We know that they're willing to incorporate true and redshirt freshmen into that rotation up front. So do one of those guys get in the mix as well? And the more I look at it, that's why I say, hey, maybe an interior guy, but probably not another tackle. You can correct me if you think otherwise. But when I look at that, I say left tackle is the one position I'm interested to see sorting out. I think that Max, with a full year in the weight room, with some, Big Ten reps under his belt now after coming in as a junior college transfer who didn't even get the opportunity to play in 2023 for personal reasons. I don't want to say I'm totally comfortable with that, but I think that if the coaching staff says we really like what we saw from him, because I did as well, that I'm okay with them moving in that direction.
Well, and I think, because I agree with you. I don't think they're going to end up one more tackle. It just the numbers don't add up. There's no you would have seen somebody else transfer out by now if that was the case, and it would have been a younger guy because I'm talking in addition to Caleb Jafai, because if you just run through, let's do a 3 deep at each position. Left tackle, you got Max, Sewane, Hilkema. Left guard, you'd have Geirean, you'd have Pocky, you'd have Boyajian or Rinch or somebody else,
sure,
or a freshman, one of the Jake Flores, for example. And so you kind of want that staggered progression where it's almost like each year one guy either graduates or takes another year, and then in 2 years you're starting, or you kind of just work your way up the ladder. And when you look at the tackle position, at worst, let's say Max takes a step back and Drew takes a step up, then you just put Carver over to left and Drew raises himself back up at right tackle. Whichever one of those. That's why the Carver edition is so important, because you don't need another tackle in that mold, because you also took plenty of tackles in the freshman class. And not that we expect them to play, but just from a progression standpoint and a numbers on the scholarship perspective, that would just almost kind of seem to cancel out somebody else. Like somebody else would have to. Now, if somebody else transfers out, there's your open spot. If we're not, I'm not just, again, speculation here, no actual sourcing on this. If Boyajian says, hey, you know what, I would want to go somewhere else. Or, Hilkema obviously was an Arizona guy, so he's not going anywhere. Unless Sewane enters the portal in the next 48 hours, which none of us expect to happen. And I think that's also why, where you keep Max at left tackle, Sewane takes another step. So after Max graduates, then you can reassess. And maybe if Sewane was looking good at the end of 25, then you say, cool, we'll run with him in 26 and keep that moving forward. The right tackle position, Drew, goes back up at 26. And so all these natural progressions are in place to where everything basically just screams, go get a right guard or go get a left guard, go get a guard. And no pun intended on that one, because, Geirean guard, everybody else like that. It's all those sorts of things that it just says, like, the offensive line is there. Now you just have to coach and develop them up. And you're really more set for the long term. That's why the guard position is like, go get a 25 guy. Go get a guy who you can just say, you know what, you're starting. Then none of the young guys are going to care, because like, we'll learn from him and keep it moving forward.
Right. That's a great way to put it. And why we're so high on potentially adding Wendell Moy, for that all fits that absolutely perfectly. But Lars, we haven't spent enough time on the Sun Bowl. We got to get more into that, which we'll get to right after a message from our good friends over at FanDuel. Get ready to tackle the NFL action with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook, because right now new customers can bet $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if you win. FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need to place live bets on the NFL all in one place. So when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. You'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. That's FanDuel.com. Never waste a hunch. Make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. A couple guys that I would certainly recommend keeping an eye on this Sunday. Top of the list, got to be Ja'Marr Chase. He's been just absolutely exceptional all season long. Anytime touchdown, I love it. You know what? Give me 2+ touchdowns for Ja'Marr Chase this weekend. Book it. Go check out those odds and so many more over on FanDuel. So Lars, speaking of the Sun Bowl, Tyler Shough is not going to play in this game. That's Louisville starting quarterback. Curious to see how that's going to play out for them. But when you look at this game, I don't know what you're very interested in, because for me personally, the number one thing that I'm looking for is Maximus McCree, where that's something we discussed him a little bit earlier, and we haven't seen him since the Iowa game, where I remember talking to Brendan Carroll a couple of weeks ago, right before the Oregon game. He said, yeah, he'll be available in emergency situations this week, and we're potentially expecting him back for the bowl game. So whatever role that might be in, we'll see. But with Kaylee Tafai obviously transferring out, I think he's probably going to end up starting that game. I don't necessarily think that's a bold prediction by any stretch of the imagination, but that's something where we're going to see DeMont. We're going to see potentially some other young guys up front, where I wouldn't be surprised if there's more of a rotation. I know that's not, what Jedd Fisch might have said in his, bowl week press conference or anything like that, but we know what he likes to do. It's not going to count against anybody's red shirt. So if you see a couple more guys mixed in like that, I personally wouldn't be surprised.
Yeah, I think that underlying that statement, and not that you bury the lead, but I'm just curious to see how many freshmen end up playing in the game. And specifically, not just on the offensive line, but just kind of in general, when you look at this class, because everything that Jed said this year was building the foundation. You lost a couple of not foundational pieces, but with Kaylee going, it's like, okay, that spot opens up where maybe Justin Hilkema get some game time.
Sure.
Does, David Boyajian does he get some guard reps? We see where he's going to be at, because a lot of this is, where are these guys ending their year at? We already know what Kamori is. We already know what Peyton Waters is. We already know what insert a handful of other guys are. But now for me, it's okay, what's behind them? How close is Audric Harris? Audric Harris is actually another name that I would be very curious to see, because Jeremiah Hunter has not declared, in terms of he's transferring or doing anything like that. But it just seems like, Audric is a guy that burned his red shirt, had to be for a reason, because obviously you're bringing in 5 guys in the 25 class at that position. So can Audric, and this game, aside from the Oregon game, like this is almost like that was like a preseason game. Obviously, because again, I'm not saying it was a preseason game, but we're just going to classify it as a preseason game for argument's sake. Narratives matter here, okay? Because the reason why I say that is that was DeMond's first start in a woeful, 10 sacks, 0 chance. I'm willing to bet $100. There's no way DeMond gets sacked 10 more times the rest of his career in a game.
I don't like your FanDuel odds on, what another 10 sack game would be. I don't want to say I love those odds there.
No, exactly. And so with that being said, this is DeMond's first start. This is his first, give him a clear start with massive prep and probably some reworked offensive line. With that being said, this is a game where if Max is going to be the starting left tackle next year, get him that running start, because if Max doesn't play or doesn't even, factor in that much in the Sun Bowl, then our last segment of, hey, how does the 25 offensive line look? Now there's a little more questions, because, it was just a dislocated thumb is what Jed and Brendan both initially said way back in the Iowa game, and then hasn't played the rest of the season. It's like, okay, what's missing here? Was it a thumb injury? Did he have surgery on it? Those sorts of things.
Well, I don't think that that's something that we necessarily need to speculate too much on. I don't think you're wrong in that thought process, but it's one of those things where you might as well be safe with something like that, because we saw more in that big brace for a couple of weeks, where that's kind of the biggest thing for me in that same vein, where it's, you want to make sure that a guy like that is out there if possible, but seems like a really easy thing to re-injure, especially for an offensive lineman.
No, yeah, and I'm not speculating on what the rehab has been. I'm more or less saying, like, because of the gap of time in between, if we didn't see him now, that would be a little more surprising. And so that's why, if you're going to lay the foundation on this is the game to do it. And on the defensive side, it's kind of like what's next, because how much game rep does Devin Bryant? What do we see? Hayden Moore, right? Yeah, Hayden Moore.
Yeah,
the Michigan linebacker. What are the guys behind Carson and Zoe going to do? Because as we've talked about, they're looking at Josiah Trotter, they're probably looking at a couple other linebackers, but you also have the young class coming in with Xavier Fannie-Saleh, Jonathan Epperson, et cetera, et cetera. So with that being said, what does that group look like? Does Elijah Jackson get some more reps? Because again, part of this is you're balancing, you want the seniors to go out on the positive note. So you're not you're not going to bench Thaddeus. You're not going to bench Zoe or Carson, but it's more or less like you should be able to, if you're in this game, and that's kind of the other side that we should, we'll get more into as the game gets closer. Louisville is a 4.5, 5.5 point favorite, I believe, on FanDuel currently as we look at things now. you want to win the game, but you also want to get the game reps for the younger guys. And so there's a fine line in balancing how many snaps does a guy like Audric get, how many snaps does maybe a Rashawn Clark get, some younger guys that you want to see going into the offseason, but you still want to try and win the game. And I'm not saying by playing those guys, you're not winning the game, but there is a fine line balance, because as I say, how much do we see of Max? Well, it's like, you still want to win the game. And if he's not in the position to do that, but then Sewanee was also hurt at the same point in the season. So I think that's why that left tackle position is really important in Sunville.
So I absolutely agree with you there. One other thing that I really want to see from this game in terms of not only just what that rotation might look like, but how you might balance things going forward is at running back, where, Cam Davis obviously announces an intention to enter the transfer portal. So if he takes visits and he wouldn't be eligible for the game, like Jed Fish talked about a couple of weeks ago, I'm curious to see how the running back split is going to work, because I think that'll give us a really interesting view into what 2025 could look like. You and I have speculated about the Huskies maybe adding another running back, but whether they do or don't, I think this is a great view to see, okay, we know that Jonah Coleman is going to get the bulk of the carries once again. Obviously, you don't want to get him hurt in a game like this and potentially risk anything for 2025. And at the same point, you know that you're going to have a really exciting running back duo, and you want to see how they're going to handle that kind of workload, where just some of the option things that you could do with both Jonah and Adam in the backfield would be so much fun. I think that would be just, I think about that a lot, but I'm curious to see what that might look like. I think that's just one thing to keep an eye on. But another one is what are you going to do on just defensively? We got to spend a minute or two on this, where we know that Bill Belichick said, hey, not doing any coaching things in terms of talking about other people until after the bowl game. We'll get more into some of those things over the next couple of weeks. But with Steve Belichick, with all of that sort of stuff, Jed Fish has said, hey, we're treating this like a championship game. But you can't help but think about the future at the same point, right?
Exactly. And that's what I'm saying in terms of how there's a very, very, very fine line between, Louisville is 8-4. So this isn't like Oregon. This is a very winnable game for Washington. You're only 4.5-point dogs. So in that sense, you're not viewing this as, hey, you know what? This is like playing Penn State in a bowl game. It's like, look, probably not going to win this game, so we can get more reps for the younger guys. Like maybe Adam Muhammad would get a start in that sense, and Jonah would still get reps. And I'm not saying you're benching these guys, but just there's a significant kind of difference between winning the game with the guys you have and the guys that Here's another one, Jayden Wayne. How many reps?
Sure.
Because with Lance Holtzclaw taking a visit to BYU this week, Lance is out. Well, we will love Lance, but just now that's a body that, as Jed said, as you pointed out, once you take a visit, that's it. It's a wrap. And so now you start to look at that edge position. Does Jayden Wayne get more reps? There's a bunch. By the way, that edge room is so deep. Like if you could get the depth at edge that you have at the offensive line, like my God, we're in business here. But with that being said, how many reps do some of those younger guys get? And that's kind of why I mentioned Devin Bryant. Like Devin Bryant, what is he going to look like in 25? Is he your middle linebacker? Is he your backup linebacker? Where is he at? Because we've seen him this year, but is he Carson Bruner from 23, or is he kind of a mixed in between of like he might not be a starter, but we want him to take significant reps and play all 12 games next season. So there's a very kind of fine line where you need to see some of those guys in game action before you can go into the offseason and say, okay, we are absolutely happy about the linebacker spot, or we're absolutely happy about the safety spot. Like I'm curious to see, aside from Peyton Waters, how many other guys get in. We haven't seen Justin Harrington back there, so I'm assuming it's going to be more young guys back there and those sorts of things. And so it's just all going to be interesting to see we play out. When we get to some bowl practices and get the next media availability, we'll kind of find out like, hey, what is the idea here? How much balance? What's the ratio? Was it 60-40, 70-30, 80-20?
Sure.
What's the reps of the seniors winning and the young guys getting experience? Because you can't just mail it in on the young guys and say, hey, we're going to just roll with the seniors and try to win this game, because win or lose, now you have more questions going in the offseason than you did coming in the game.
Lars, as always, thank you so much for being here. Thank you every day for tuning in. We really do appreciate your support. And just a quick heads up for you, like we talked about a little earlier, make sure you go check out that Locked On Huskies Insider program. The link that is down in the description below. Get a free 2-week trial. And after that, it's $4.99 a month. And we're dropping all the transfer portal stuff we're hearing when guys might be coming in on visits, different little things like that, all the recruiting rumors, so many different little things like that. It's really easy. All goes right to your text message inbox. And if you have any questions, hey, just reply, hit us up. We try to get back to you as often as we possibly can. And with that being said, please also make sure you subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. So that's YouTube, Spotify, Apple Games and Music. We're there. We're everywhere. We're updating this channel with new content every single day. So make sure you click that like button, click that little bell so you know this when we post a new video. If you have any questions, comments, concerns, drop them right down below in the comment section. And if you're audio only, please give us a 5-star review, as those things really do help us out a lot. Thank you so much for tuning in, and we'll talk to you on Monday.